Welcome to another edition of First Minister's Questions Review. And once again we're reduced in numbers by the missing Mr. Attridge, who we believe is probably on either back or on his way back from Cuba. I dare say it was all very fine. We'll get the whole report next week.
Hope he hasn't caught anything.
Yes, going to tropical countries you can get all kinds of strange things.
Indeed, you can.
Meanwhile,
Segue.
yes, meanwhile, today's First Minister's Questions was, I would say, average. We'll see what the pundits have got to say. Let's give Alex a start this week. Mr. Alex Grant, that's just Norman Stewart, myself, Stewart Lochhead. Alex.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you. It was a fairly average performance. There was nothing particularly exceptional, apart from wee Willie. We'll come back to that in a minute. I thought Alex was pretty competent. I didn't think at the end he scored some more direct hits off Margo's questioning because that gave him a great opportunity. But if you focus on Mrs. Lamont, her questions about the health service, there's no question it is easy to find in any walk of life an element of performance, whether it's chaos caused by snow, as happened 2 or 3 years ago, and the Transport Secretary had to resign as a consequence, or the queues in A&E are bigger. Alex's answer, I think, was very competent, but I actually thought he could have hit her even harder on that. I do get the impression he is being advised the whole time to not go for the jugular, because some voters don't like it, because I think he could have gone for the jugular on it. He made the points, but it wasn't quite as acerbic as I think he can be.
Well, but on that point of the advice, given the very small numbers of people who actually watch First Minister's Questions, it's really the second-hand or the third-party reports that matter to Joe Public. The headlines, the sound bites, whatever the media then report, that matters, surely.
Well, no, it is, and they can always report it any which way they like. So you could argue he should go for the jugular. He should have said, look, no one's saying, because there isn't such a thing as a perfectly operating health service anywhere on the planet. However, we've invested more than you. We've got better results than you had. You didn't invest in it, and the best example of a devolved situation in Wales shows what Labour does for you. So please do not suggest that anybody entering A&E, the man on the hospital trolley that you started with, is at risk under the SNP. It would be a damn sight greater risk under you. And if we look at what's happening in England under the coalition over here, it's going to give. In fact, there was a report out this week from one of the watchdogs, I can't remember what it is, saying there's a disaster about to happen in A&E in England. So there was a perfect opportunity there to stick it right in there.
So you should be writing his speeches.
Well, I could have written a better response
or
than
his
him.
Strategy meetings just before he comes into the chamber.
I think he could have been much tougher.
I mean, it's this, lying on a trolley.
It was a good line.
I'm sorry. I mean, I've been at hospital often enough with not very serious stuff, but once with a very serious thing, and you lie on a trolley.
Yep, I remember waking up on a trolley.
They put you on a trolley and you stay on that trolley until you go.
But she's not saying there's anything wrong lying on a trolley. What she said is the statistics for the waiting times in A&E have gone up. They're 100% worse than they were.
I'd be really, because she keeps going back to this guy. I would love to know if this guy was hooked up to any sort of monitoring. Because there are conditions where you are left, although monitored, you are left on an alarmed monitor to see what happens.
Sure, but look, that's only a soundbite, Norrie. The point is the statistics she was quoting were very heavy-duty statistics. She quoted several health authorities where the waiting times over a period, I can't remember the exact period, had gone up by 100%.
Well, at that rate, do we...
Yeah, but she's going the winner. She won't be able to do this.
All right, but do we compliment her on the research that our assistants are doing at the moment?
No, I think she's taking the easy way out. She's not. I mean, Salmon's always going to be able to come back with. She's in her comfort zone. She's performed well. 2 weeks on the trot.
Could be 3 weeks.
But really hit him. she needs to find something. She needs the curveball. She needs something he's not expecting.
Yeah,
no, that's true.
but she, as we discussed earlier, she did better last week because currency is a much more tricky question to deal with. This week, you're absolutely right, Norrie. Just
It's meat and drink NHS every week.
well, it
It's
is
always gonna be
because
a-
you know all the parties use it to try and vilify whoever's in charge. There's no question.
I was just thinking, Labour NHS, the Tories were the law, and Willie was. They were going to have to devote half the programme to Willie.
Oh yeah, I mean,
But
Kamikaze.
yeah. Well, when you consider, I walked in here before it started and I said, well, for the first week in 10, Willie can't talk about 2-year-olds because his bosses just said X, Y, Z,
Right.
and he stood up and said it. Alex Salmond. I mean, that wasn't feigned amusement. He was gobsmacked. And then when he went back at him, he thinks he can get up and still do a soundbite that says, "Oh, you're still not answering the question. Why haven't we got more 2-year-olds?"
Actually, now I think about it, the overall picture this week seems to be that some of the questions by not by the party leaders were actually better and more interesting than the party leaders one.
But
Neil Findlay,
that's often the case.
Yeah,
Jackie Bailey, Margo.
Yeah, they were. No, you could. Yeah, it is often the case. You're right. But the truth is, the more we talk about it, I tend to agree with you. I don't think there was a hell of a lot of difference in performance between Lamont and Alex in some respects. But was it a killer question that they can turn into a headline? Well, I dare say the press can do anything with anything, but
Well, yeah. I mean, had it been a case that we didn't have an anti-SNP press,
yeah.
I'm sorry, you don't run the same headline 4 weeks in a
Well, it would
row.
have been a non-story.
That's at least the third time she's brought this up.
I know it is.
I'd have been much more impressed if she'd said, "Oh, Mrs. McShuggle, Theopter Mukti, lay on a trolley." But it's the same guy she's talking about.
I know.
Can they not find anybody else?
Well, obviously.
Is there one person in the Scottish NHS has lain on a trolley for more than 4 hours?
Do you know, it's interesting, normally Salmond
there must be.
rebuts statistics with other statistics,
Yeah.
and a list of them. He didn't do that today. He just went for...
No, he did.
Did he?
Oh, he did. He said that the satisfaction rates with the Scottish NHS
briefly,
have gone
it-
up.
it
They're
was-
fine. He didn't quote them.
It was 2 statistics as opposed to 10.
He did quote
He normally
them.
gave the list.
And he didn't mention Staffordshire.
He's moving
Under their
away.
watch.
He's moving away from these long lists of statistics.
Yeah, they're kind of a
Again,
dull.
somebody's saying to him, "No, you need to give that up. You need to be emotional." I think.
Well, yeah, I think he should have been more emotional, but I think he should have said, "Please, do not tell me that this party and this government do not care. I'll tell you what's a demonstration of people who do not care. People who reign over Staffordshire, where hundreds of people died unnecessarily. Parties who, when asked the question, do you want to spend 100 billion on Trident, say yes, even though they're taking the NHS apart in England. When did your boss, and by the way, have you talked to your boss lately? Because when you were interviewed last week, you wouldn't answer the question about whether you talked to your boss.
We didn't. See this bills here. We've got this is their answer now. Maybe just let's focus on something that is slightly. We just kind of agreed on this anyway. The bit players today actually seem to do quite well. What was Margo McDonald, Neil Findlay, Jackie Bailey,
Yeah.
and their contribution, just for a change, added to made it a better. They kept it as an average FMQs. Without their contributions, it wasn't going anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah, in fact,
Apart from, of course, Willie. Now, who's going to give us the
well,
Willie?
just before you get to Willie, you're absolutely right. Jackie Bailey's question about the National Health Service was far, far better than Joanna Lamont's, because she asked a question about what the Health Secretary had said, and then had been rejected by his apparatchiks, and asked Salmond what the truth was, and he didn't answer it.
Yeah, well,
So you're right.
Tends not to answer Jackie Bailey. Just reminds us how
Well,
she's
I
been
know,
put
but
out lying before.
No. Jackie Bailey said that the minister had said that bed numbers would stay the same.
Yeah.
And Salmond came back with the bed planning tool, and Jackie Bailey
He
came
didn't
back.
answer it though.
So the bed cutting tool, she said.
What
Aye, she did.
Salmond said was right. the ability to judge the number of beds we need is contained within the bed planning tool, da da da. She came back with the bed cutting tool.
It's been renamed, she said.
I know.
But again, Jackie Bailey does this all the time. He came back and went, oh, right, bed cutting. Under the Labour Party, boom, boom, boom,
Yeah,
boom,
no,
boom.
that's a fair comment. You're
You
right.
know.
Yeah. No, you're right.
Every year. So, I'm sorry, he won that.
Margo's contribution about the Foreign Affairs Committee.
report. Yeah.
All they were talking about was their prestige and how that Scotland
Yeah.
was to leave the UK, they would lose prestige here, there, and everything.
And he managed not to say English prestige, he managed to say our UK.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
we-
Yeah. Which is always tricky. Yeah.
yes, which is-
Agreed.
but it's a good point. Neil Findlay's question about lobbying, that was very relevant because the proposed Westminster legislation to limit the power of lobbying and lobby interests was dropped from the Queen's speech yesterday.
And what did his boss have to say about that? Miliband. Did he criticise him on dropping that? I didn't hear
I have
that.
no idea yet.
Because if he didn't, you see, Salmond should have gone back at him and said,
Miliband's got to be lining himself up for whatever happens after politics. The same as Tony Blair, you know, he's got to. He needs his lobby.
well, I
Well,
know
money.
that, but you can't have a minion saying what you're going to do about lobbying when the minion's boss didn't do anything about saying
He's
to
not
Cameron.
He's not an apparatchik.
Neil Findlay's a very red.
He's from the unions.
That doesn't matter though. You say.
I'm sorry. In the Labour Party,
No,
it matters
yeah,
a lot.
well, I know it
He's
matters.
never going to sit
a-
on a Westminster front bench.
He's a red.
No, I know that, but that's not the point. The point is, if you're the leader of the Scottish government, you turn around and say, Mr. Findlay, why are you asking me about something which we, in fact, I would contend, are more robust on? If you get any specific suggestions, by all means, bring them forward. But don't you think it'd be a good idea if the Labour Party actually did something about that? Because your boss isn't interested.
Well,
what have you got to say
okay,
about it?
Okay, let's look at it in terms of Scotland. The way the unions are falling at the moment, and he is a union man.
Yeah,
he is
yeah.
a union MSP.
Yeah.
The way the unions are falling at the moment, you could end up with more unions
Voting
in
for
support
independence.
in support of a yes
Yeah, you-
vote
yeah, you could.
and a no vote.
Yeah.
Salmond isn't going to antagonise a union rep, and I'm sorry. I mean, we've spoken to this guy is a union.
I know,
rep.
I know, but look, now
much
you got-
more than a Labour
He
Party.
was, he was good. We went to, what was it? It was a debate here in the Out of the Blue Drill Hall Neil Findlay was at, and he's soft on the Constitution. He's not a rabid.
No.
No.
No, but you don't. The point I'm making is quite simple. You don't attack him. You attack the Labour Party. And you say to him, I think you should be challenging your boss about this, because as in so many issues, your boss is more interested in pandering to Westminster in the southeast of England than he is to Scotland or anywhere else
Well,
in the
let's-
United Kingdom. So
Yeah,
please don't criticise this forum, which, by the way, your mate stood up in Parliament, your deputy leader, and said this was an undemocratic institution run as a bloody dictatorship. So it's all very well you asking me that question. I'll listen to you if you've got a specific
Yeah, it's fine.
suggestion, but why don't you go talk to your boss?
All right then. Now
The
look here.
more important thing about that exchange was the opportunity that Salmond gave both Neil Findlay and Ruth Davidson to come up
With a proposal, yeah.
with a solid proposal that he said they would take seriously and in the spirit of cooperation and all that.
Yeah,
that's fair
yeah, that's a good.
Now,
point.
he's started doing this more often.
That's fair
He,
enough.
he is trying to look conciliatory.
Yeah,
And
that's a good
that's part of his calming himself down, not going for the jugular. That's
Well,
the kind of thing
okay,
where
well,
I'm
let's
like,
let's also consider what wasn't mentioned. There could have been some references. There's a poll which doesn't do the Yes campaign a lot of service this morning, published in the Times. No reference to that at all, not even obliquely. There's been a big row about racist comments by a very highly placed Labour apparatchik called Ian Smart, and that's been simmering for the last few days. No reference to that either. I'm surprised that neither of these at least got a mention somehow or other.
Well, the point is, who would mention it? You see, obviously the Labour Party ain't going to mention it. The Tory Party, the Better Together people would never raise that. The first point, your point about the poll is interesting. I don't know why somebody didn't raise that. That's very interesting. But as far as the racist rubbish that came from being smart is concerned, I'm not surprised that that didn't get raised. And quite frankly, if you were the SNP, you wouldn't actually try and fit that in anywhere because, you know,
No, it's,
you're
it's
asking
an
for
open
trouble.
door to the cybernet accusation.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why I think that wouldn't be mentioned. But you're right about the Ipsos Norrie poll. I don't know why that didn't get mentioned. 'Cause
Would
you
they have
think,
had access to it in time to actually...
well, if you've seen it, they'll have seen it.
Yes, I mean it was
Yeah, but we're
it
not
was
gonna-
published overnight, so and you know.
Yeah, no, they'd have had it, and it's an easy grenade to lob in any context. You know, you ask a question,
Still
you say,
above 30% though, isn't it?
Yeah, still 31%.
but it's gone down a bit.
Yes.
So you would
No,
still.
it's gone down compared to the last good
Yeah,
Ipsos Mori.
34
Hasn't
to
gone-
31.
Hasn't gone down in terms of the other polls.
No, I know that, but it's going back.
That's
Okay, it's one sample, but
Well, let's-
politicians usually
Okay, well,
use one.
let's run through their usual scoring then, which we've been at this point we're allowed to get a bit more specific. The presiding officer was a depute, if you noticed, and she wasn't noticed, which I would say is a good thing.
No, I heard quite a lot of shouting going on because Salmond and Lamont had to stop on at least one occasion and wait for the noise to subside, and there was no Hodge or Wheeze coming from her. I actually thought she was worse than the normal presiding officer.
However,
I'm surprised you say that.
she wasn't that noticeable, you know. Right then, let's start with Norrie's scoring this week.
Joanna I thought did well again this week. Not as well as last week. It's getting to the point where I have to score her realistically, not allowing for the fact that she's not been there that long, etc. So let's presume she sneaked into the first division. So I'll give her a 6 on that. I think Alex beat her. I don't think he beat her well, but I think he beat her.
Yeah.
I do, however, think he did much better against everybody else. Willie Rennie just gave him an own
Well,
goal.
he did. It was Salmon that said kamikaze.
I'm kind of in agreement with Alex about this. I think he needs to get that killer punch. The National Health Service, as I said earlier, he needs a one-liner for that. Joanna Lamont keeps using this in the real world, and he needs something like, the real world in Swansea is cut funding to the National Health under a Labour-devolved administration. He needs to start doing the real world in Scotland is, but the real world in England is, the real world in Wales is.
Right.
Yeah, agreed.
So he's missing a trick. Willie Rennie.
You haven't scored Salmon yet?
Oh, sorry, I'll give Alex an 8. Willie Rennie, entertainment value, 10 out of 10. Best laugh I've had.
Aye.
First Mrs. Question.
Yes, you were very loud, laughing.
Politically, the guy is a complete numpty.
It's unbelievable.
His boss says, 4 or 5 hours before he gets to ask his question, the exact answer, essentially, that Salmon's been given him for the last 10 weeks.
Yeah.
I don't know how many times. I think he must have asked the question about 2-year-olds 7 out of 8 times.
Oh, easy.
And the 9th time, he's even in disagreement with his boss. The guy's a knob.
And as I say, Salmon first response was kamikaze.
Yeah.
Well, I'm giving him a -5. But, right, I'm giving him a +10 for entertainment. Okay? Which means he's getting a 0. I know that's not mathematical.
Okay.
What about Ruth then?
Ruth, I thought she actually asked the question quite well.
Yeah.
She's back to doing her I've already got the answer thing.
And she wasn't over smug.
And
And Salmon wasn't able to actually say, well, things are worse in England.
well, what they're beginning to learn is when you ask Alex Salmond a question, make the answer complicated. Make the truth complicated. Because he does do the statistical thing. He was quite right. It's unless you want the law changed, these are decisions that have to be independent of government.
That's true. But how effective is it to go back 20 years, referring to this, whatever the act is that it covers whole life sentences in Scotland?
I'm sorry.
Bringing that
Would
up
the
when the Tories
Conservatives-
were in power. Is it really effective? It's a 20-year-old.
No, well, it's not. It's not effective if, as I said a moment ago, before we started recording, she suggested that in England they had done something about this. She wasn't specific, but he didn't refute that fact. So she inferred that there was something that could have been done above and beyond the 1993 Act, or it was that he referred to, which is pre-devolution. So she inferred that you could do something. He didn't answer it, and then he said, if you got any suggestions, let me know. And I don't think the answer to that was very good.
I think you're going to see a lot more of, well, you give me what your idea is.
On what?
Well, Lamont's starting, the Labour Party is starting to do this thing, we're willing to sit down and talk to you.
Yeah.
Right? So Sam can go along with that. He doesn't have a problem with that.
No.
But if he starts throwing the ball back into their court, and they don't come up with anything, he's got a ready-made answer for the next time it comes up.
Agreed.
All right, but what's the score for Ruth?
I'll give her a 4, actually, because, you know, it was effective enough, as you say. Salmond wasn't prepared on it, you know.
No.
He wasn't prepared on it. So, Presiding Officer, I'll give a 2-2. Just because I can't think of really why I should give her anything else.
Well,
I pretty much agree with all those scores. I think Alex made all the points, but I don't think he made them as well as I know he can. I still think he's a couple of points better than them. So my ratings, I've rated Joanna Lamont as 6 and Ruth Davidson as 6. Well, because I think Ruth Davidson was better than Joanna Lamont, but Joanna Lamont was using the bigger question that we all know everybody's interested in, no matter how many people watch this, but I have to put it in that context, in the health service. So I've given them both the same score. I've given Alec 8 as a couple of points better than that, because I think he handled it very competently, but I've seen him do a lot better. I do believe, and Willie Rennie I've given 0 to. I mean, if Phil had been here, it would have been minus 25. But I tend to, because of what you said about the entertainment value relative to what he's supposed to be doing for his living, then 0 is the kindest anybody could be. So he's an irrelevance. Let's forget about him. I agree with what you're saying about if Salmond is trying to be, appear less confrontational for all the reasons we know, because some people don't like it, and B, he is trying to use what is a very good line of defence, which I don't think in the past has been used often enough. If they say X, then the answer to that is, well, actually, when you were in charge, it was X minus, so I don't know who you're complaining about, and give loads of examples about how incompetent they were in office, and then say, but I tell you what, I'm a nice bloke. If you actually think, for example, that we should have more resource, because he tends to take the Tories out on this for the reasons we've discussed ad nauseum. They criticise something and he turns around and says, are you joking? This isn't great in Scotland and you're doing what you're doing in England. Consequential
give us a score for the presiding officer. You're having another rant here.
Oh, okay, 2. Minus 2, sorry, whatever, 2. Aye.
2.
But he doesn't, you're right, he doesn't need to say, where's your ideas?
Right, so let me see. I'll go start with Alec. Alec was average for Alec. So I give him a 7, because he was average for Alec. Joanne, I think I'll have to move to the position that Norrie has taken on Joanne. She is holding to, it seems to me she's had 3 good weeks, so I'm sorry, I'm going to give her a 7. Ruth as well, 6, no 6 would be for too much, but give her a 5, because she made her point. As I say, Salmond didn't even refer to things being worse down south, or it was all the coalition's fault. They didn't use that argument, so she got away with that. I have to agree with Willie Rennie. What a joke. Kamikaze Willie. Minus 5. And the presiding officer.
You didn't give me a score for Ruth.
I thought I did. I'll give him 5.
I think you did say 5.
Presiding officer, I would say probably 2 as well. She just she wasn't that noticeable, and they did do a lot of shouting, I suppose, in both Joanne Alex had to stop.
I suppose in reality we should be really happy she isn't a Burkle. You know, who tends to interfere.
How are we totaling up?
Willie, surprisingly enough, came last with a -5, but the ghost of the clown of Willie Rennie
Yes.
is going to come. Ruth came in third with 15. Joanne, it is strange that, because Joanne's beaten Ruth, but Ruth, I think, was probably more effective, but they're doing a different job of presentation. So Joanne's coming at 19 and Alex is coming at 23, which is maybe strangely probably a bit more generous than he deserved against Joanne, although I think he dealt with everything else
Yeah.
more reasonably.
Yeah, that's pretty true.
And Margo, do we
Sure.
give Margo a score? I
Well,
think.
if you like. She could represent the rest of them. The
I
backbencher.
get Margo.
She's always good.
I would score the backbenchers very high this week.
I think they were the saving grace. They saved.
They turned it into grown-up politics.
Yeah,
again.
no, fair comment.
That was good.
Yeah, no, I agree.
So we should maybe have a category for backbenchers.
But anyway, well done to the backbenchers this week.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as we head for the half hour on this FMQs review, we have to say thank you for the viewers and listeners for watching or listening. We'll be back next week. And thank you, Norrie. Thank you, Alex. And it's goodbye from myself, Stewart Lochhead. Goodbye.